Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to learn about dynamic memory allocation. As we know that there are two types of memory allocation, static memory allocation and dynamic memory allocation. The static memory allocation is the mechanism where allocation of memory is done at compile time. So we cannot change it. All normal variables and array gets memory at compile, whereas dynamic memory allocation is a mechanism through which programmer can allocate memory dynamically or at the runtime of program. So the difference between static memory allocation and dynamic memory allocation is in static memory allocation, the memory is allocated at the compile time, whereas in dynamic memory allocation it is done at runtime. In static memory allocation, we cannot increase or decrease the size of variable. But in dynamic memory allocation, we can increase or decrease the size at runtime. In static memory allocation, there is the wastage of memory because if we stored less element than the maximum size, then there is a wastage of memory. Whereas in dynamic memory allocation, there is no wastage of memory because it can be increased or decreased at the runtime. Consider a situation where we have to declare an array of 10 integer number. So there will be two cases. The first one, if we want to store more than 10 number, then it is not possible because the array size is 10. And the second case is if our requirement decreased. Let's say we want to store only the 7 number, then the memory will be wasted. To overcome this problem, the concept of dynamic memory allocation is used. In dynamic memory allocation, the functions are used to allocate the memory dynamically. The functions which are used are malloc. It allocates the memory of the given size. The second function is calloc. It does the same memory allocation like malloc, but it initializes each block to 0. The third function is realloc. This function is used to increase or decrease previously allocated memory by malloc or calloc. And the fourth function is free, because after allocating the memory, we have to free it. Now let's see the program for dynamic memory allocation. First of all, we have to declare stdlib.h because we are using the memory allocation functions. Therefore, it is necessary to declare the stdlib.h header file. Then, to store the numbers or the element will require a pointer because the pointer points to the addresses, and here we are allocating memory dynamically. So, we'll require one pointer. And now we'll take the size from the user, the size which we want to allocate by this. So we'll store the size in the variable size. This is the syntax of malloc function to allocate the memory dynamically. So ptr, the pointer variable, is equals to int star. By default, malloc function returns void, so we have to typecast it as integer. Then into the bracket size, which is the variable which holds the number of element, and size of integer, because each integer requires 4 bytes of memory. So this function will allocate the memory size into the 4 bytes. For example, if our user is giving the number of element 2, then 2 into 4, the 8 byte memory will be allocated. Then next, we have to check if the memory is successfully allocated or not. Therefore, we are using this if statement. So if pointer is equals to null, if nothing is stored in pointer, then the memory is not allocated successfully. If it is allocated successfully, then we'll take the input from the user through the printf, enter the number, and then for loop from I is equals to 0, where I is less than size and I plus plus. Will scan in the pointer plus 1. So the numbers will be get directly stored into the pointers. Then we'll print the number with the printf statements as using the same for loop as above. At last, which is very important part of this program, we have to free the memory because the memory has been allocated for this program. So it is necessary to free it. Now we'll run it and see the output. So I'm entering the number of element as 4. So I will enter the number 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the numbers are 1, 2, 3 and 4, which means our program has successfully compiled and run. So in the next lecture, I am going to teach how to install the PostgreSQL on Windows. So subscribe my channel and share and stay tuned.